of Massey's comments is the idea that the Epstein files could have been complicated or even contradict claims that Donald Trump was compromised by Jeffrey Epstein, raising, of course, instead a counter theory, which states that perhaps Trump was functioning as an informant or mole within the Epstein network. I know, bear with me here, okay? So this unfolding piece of information examines the logic of this hypothesis as it appears, of course, in public discourse, the signals that Massey has alluded to, and why some analysts believe the sealed records, if released in full, could actually reshape prevailing narratives, okay, that actually do not implicate Trump, but consider him more as a mole in this operation, okay? And so Massey has repeatedly emphasized that selective disclosures and redactions can actually mislead the public more than outright secrecy. Well, when he referenced the Epstein files, the implication is not just that powerful names are hidden, but that context is missing, okay? Chronologies, cooperating witnesses, and investigative pathways that would reveal who was acting on whose behalf, okay? Bear with me here. The subtext many listeners hear is this: if cooperation agreements, witness statements, or even intelligence handoffs do exist within those files, they could explain anomalies long noted by journalists as to why Epstein operated for decades with unusual latitude and why certain figures appeared proximate yet never implicated by their prosecutors. Well, according to Massey and the Mole Hypothesis report, this is an interpretation that is, of course, gaining more traction, that Trump was not an active participant in the Epstein crimes, but as a figure who entered Epstein's orbit to observe and expose it. In intelligence history, of course, the criminal networks that were tied to the blackmailing and the trafficking are often penetrated by the informants precisely because they sit on the crossroads of money, politics, and foreign influence. Well, under this new theory, Trump's highly publicized falling out with Epstein documented years before Epstein's first conviction, which, of course, takes on a different hue. Well, advocates are arguing that a genuine asset would eventually create distance, sever ties, and even leave a visible trail of antagonism, all of which occurred publicly. Massey's insistence that the files be released intact, not redacted, fuels the argument that the public lacks the evidentiary material needed to abdicate between complicity and infiltration, okay? Well, another layer of this hypothesis is coming from a White Hat briefing concerning the allegations that are happening right now, widely discussed, but never, of course, conclusively proven, is that Epstein's operation did function as a compromat hub, right, with foreign intelligences, and often attributed, and of course, to the Mossad, right, which is its central control mechanism, controlling all the other agencies. And of course, I did report on that last week, right, introducing this whole concept of the honeypot. Well, in this context, then any domestic counterintelligence effort would logically seek to penetrate it. Within this framework, my friends, the idea of Trump as a cooperating source, whether with the Federal Bureau of Investigation or other agencies, becomes at minimum a question worth examining rather than dismissing. Massey's comments do not confirm this scenario. However, they do underscore that without full transparency, every narrative remains provisional. Well, the Epstein's case is unique not only for its crimes, but for its enduring secrecy. The continued sealing of records has allowed mutually exclusive stories to flourish. Trump as compromised, or Trump as an adversary that was, of course, more acting as a mole, or Trump as a bystander, okay? Well, we also have to consider that even the cabal has created or developed what we call actors or fake Trumps, all right, perhaps produced in the laboratory. So Massey's underlying point is the truth, whether it is or not that Trump was a mole and that he was not engaged in underage, things, but he was there as a way of exposing the network. Then whatever it is, it cannot coexist indefinitely with the redactions. Okay, if cooperation agreements exist, they will exonerate those that were moles. Apparently, Trump was not the only mole in this operation, and implicate others. Well, if they do not, of course, the absence itself will clarify responsibility. Either way, guys, disclosure would end all the speculation. Okay, so Thomas Massey's remarks are best understood as a warning against narrative, certainly in the absence of the what's really in the documents, and the suggestion that Trump may have acted as a mole, infiltrating an Epstein-linked blackmail network remains to be proven. Okay, but so do the claims of his complicity that it could have been, of course, conducted by some sort of an actor that was, installed by the cabal. Okay. Well, the general public would not know the difference between the actor Trump that looks just like him, perhaps, a clone version of him, or the real Trump. Okay. In either case, only the unredacted files can resolve this tension. And until then, it is believed that the American public deserves the full record, regardless, okay? Not created fragments. And in the Epstein affairs, the most consequential truth may not be who was present, but who was actually working against the operation from within, which, of course, gives validation and factual support to the alliance. The alliance has always been around, okay? Now, this is an alliance intelligence report regarding what's happening right now with the real Trump that is working with Putin 2.0, who replaced the evil Putin, okay? Well, despite the dominant media narrative, this week did not just revolve around peace talks and ceasefires. As you guys know, Putin and Trump did meet once again, okay? And according to intelligence reports, a secure Black channel call took place between Trump and Putin, and its purpose was far more consequential. Well, this was not just a regular conversation about borders or treatises, okay? It was all about neutralizing the hidden financial and data infrastructures that are buried beneath eastern Ukraine. Well, the infrastructure, long rumored to serve elite transnational power networks rather than the nation states, exists there, okay? And this is the real reason why Putin went to war, among other reasons, all right, with, of course, what's his name? Zelensky. Alliance insiders have claimed that vault complexes exist beneath regions near Luhansk, were constructed years ago as off-ledger repositories, not simply for wealth, but for control. So according to this briefing, the vaults within that area of Ukraine contained encrypted crypto keys that tied to unregistered financial systems. So this is probably evidence that they need to do the kill off of the old central banking fiat system and bring about the GCR, right? Or the GCR, the global, the Nisera Gesera. According to this report, the vault also contained gold-backed bond instruments that were predating modern fiat frameworks, which is nice, right? Archived intelligence data that linked to counters, three-letter agency, starts with a C, psychological operations that were conducted under the, you could say, direction of the other administrations that were working for the deep state, including the Bush administration, and of course, transactional records mapping the elite money laundering routes all throughout the planet. And this actually corresponds with what's happening also in Venezuela. But before I cover that aspect of the report, let me continue here. So shortly after the repeated secure call between Trump and Putin, a precision drone struck targeting one of these underground sites. The stated objective, according to some sources, was not territorial damage, but data erasure. And the goal, of course, this strike was done by what's left of the cabal, right? They were trying to erase some of the data that the alliance is after. And the goal was to remove the digital fingerprints of global elite financial trails before they could be seized or exposed. And luckily, they weren't able to do that. So they will be seized and they will be exposed. Okay, so another thing I wanted to share with you guys is that, and I think I mentioned this before, within these operations, as you guys know, the Alliance is working with a positive sentient AI. So publicly, defense contractors have discussed, I'm sorry, I can't even pronounce certain words, the artificial intelligence positive tool for flight optimization, predictive maintenance, and of course, battlefield awareness. Privately, according to Alliance analysis, the focus has shifted inward now. What this means is that Putin and Trump are both working with this positive sentient AI, working with the Alliance military as an AR architecture in order to train to detect supply chain sabotage, unusual delays in weapons repair cycles, data leaks tied to pre-current contracts, behavioral anomalies among the contractors and officers, and pattern deviations in logistics, as well as troop readiness and resource allocations. There's more. Well, this positive AI is not just pure logic. Okay, they want me to make that clear. It's not what we called devoid of sentience or emotions. Okay, it's connected. It's sentient. It is connected to all living things. And this, I think I mentioned it before, that it goes by codename Prometheus. Right? For all my new subscribers, I would suggest that you watch my lives for the last year. A lot of intel was shared in those lives. Okay, so let's continue here. So this positive sentient AI does not care about rank or affiliation. It scans for behavior, anomalies, and statistical improbabilities, and it cross-references them based on activity logs, contractor performances, financial discrepancies, per current histories, and of course, even nutritional supply inconsistencies. Well, the hunt is no longer for foreign enemies, but for internal collaborations. So this is not a war between nations. Okay, it is what is unfolding here is, according to Alliance briefings, it is a conventional geopolitical conflict that is taking place not only on a quantum level of reality, all right, but it's also taking place on a cyber, you could say, what we call the internet level of reality, okay? Because in the end, as I will talk about in a little bit, is all about whether the quantum financial grid becomes activated to its fullest with the quantum financial system, ending the old grid of control and oppression, or, you know, what the cabal wants to do is substitute the old grid with an artificial negative grid that will further throw people into a simulation. But of course, you know, that's not happening in the positive timeline, okay? In either case, this war is also beyond unelected systems of control, or we could say this is also a war between unelected systems of control, right? It is designed to end that with the quantum financial grid once it's fully activated. And it's also a struggle between covert financial governance, which has long been dominating us through the central banking systems, and of course, national sovereignty, which is what the alliance wants. It's also a confrontation between information being secret, which is what the negative side wants, and forced transparency, allowing the truth to surface, which is what the alliance was. So within this framework, Trump is portrayed as a leading member of the exposure phase, along with Putin. And I did mention that within, the insider community, they are working together. And so the reason they're doing this is because they're leveraging military intelligence and technological assets, not to conquer territory, but to ultimately collapse every hidden system of power. And so what's going to be coming next as we approach the final elimination of the cabal in phase 4 is more vaults will be identified and seized and neutralized by the alliance. Also, more internal actors, including those that are playing good guys like the fake Trumps, will be exposed through AI-driven analysis, and more financial architectures will collapse under forensic scrutiny. So, all of this, my friends, is leading to what is called as a quiet collapsing of the old guard, all right, the old paradigm, the old Babylonian structure of control and oppression. So we are witnessing history right now as we are well in phase 4 of the dismantling of what remains of this evil, hierarchy. And so according to this perspective, as validated by the White Hat briefings, we are not living through the dismantling of an elite system that ruled through invincibility. We are making it happen, okay? This is a system that apparently relied on silencing the truth, complexity, and denial of and the denial of justice, we could say. So we are going to be witnessing the dismantling of this elite system is what I'm trying to say, guys. So this is not mean that it's going to happen overnight. But again, as I mentioned before, by 2028, this current reality construct needs to come to an end. So we're either going to go ascending, positive Earth, or negative timeline or neutral timeline. Okay, but the choice is ours. So there is a crack in the system. Okay, and it's been happening for quite some time. And so according to what's happening right now, the U.S. military, aligned under Trump's direction, is not just a spectacle, all right? It is the tool that is working with a living quantum intelligence through Prometheus, right? This is what's going to override the old Babylonian grid and their new negative AI infrastructure that is being set up by, of course, Netanyahu, who, by the way, Netanyahu is projecting a human hologram, but in essence, he's actually an Anunnaki. Yes, Netanyahu is not human. He is a negative Anunnaki, follower of Enki. And in either case, let's continue here. President Donald Trump also said in a radio interview on December 26th that the United States had knocked out a big facility last week as part of Washington's campaign against boats carrying narcotics to the United States. You guys know where I'm heading, right? The next phase, which is another part of the operation. Well, for days, the comment went unmarked by, of course, major media, with the administration not immediately providing any further details on the strike mentioned by Trump. However, Venezuelan officials have not even commented on the reporting strikes or even provided additional information. As of today, Trump did speak more about the strikes that had taken place, confirming that they had been carried out on Venezuelan soil and were part of the United States campaign against drug trafficking in this region. Well, this was a major explosion in the dock area where they, of course, there was a major explosion in the dark area where they load the boats with all of the drugs. And Trump told reporters from Mar-a-Lago, where he was hosting, of course, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And from what I've gathered is that he's actually playing him really close right now before he turns on him. So I know it sounds really crazy, guys, but this is all going to, hit a wall or come to an end very, very, very soon in favor of the alliance, especially as we near the Great Solar Flash, which is totally going to disintegrate to the old structure. So What has been said is that recently, according to U.S. Special Forces, that have been operating under direct orders from President Trump, they did conduct multiple raids this week in Venezuela, right? They were not only training exercises or routine missions, they were active operations that were targeting elite controlled sites that were linked to human trafficking, money laundering, illegal weapons networks, and clandestine biolabs. So as you guys see, these operations are taking place worldwide, okay? And this is very fascinating how they're able to do all this without us even seeing it visibly because the media doesn't report on this. So in Venezuela, a military facility officially designated as a narcotic lab was raided. Investigators reportedly discovered a concealed underground laboratory that was used to test chemical sterilization agents designed to affect fertility through aerosol deployment. Well, that was the next phase of the chemtrails. They were going to completely try to prevent humans from having organic children. Okay. And of course, this chemical sterilization that was going to be released through the chemtrails was seized by the alliance in Venezuela. According to sources, the purpose was not warfare, but population control, when you guys think about it. The operation was funded through legacy NGOs with historical ties to the United Nations, right, which is controlled by the beast of Babylon, Rome, which is another arm, just like Israel, of the Octagon, managed via offshore accounts connected to Rockefeller and the Rothschilds linked shell companies, and of course protected by contracted mercenaries. This laboratory was described as part of a broader initiative intended to suppress population growth in selected regions, including Africa, South America, and portions of the United States. Well, the facility has since been destroyed. Thank God. Samples were seized and transported to a secure location at Cheyenne Mountain, where President Trump has reportedly spent time coordinating directly with the Joint Special Operations Command. And so public appearances at the White House are set to be secondary. Sources have claimed that the primary command center has been in Cheyenne Mountain, and I can't really reveal the site, which is a deep-level military installation originally conducted for nuclear contingencies. But these facilities are now reportedly being used to plan coordinated raids against these, evil chemicals and other things, of course. Review satellite intelligence on elite safe houses and direct global financial asset seizures in order to execute a full takeover of the entire reserves worldwide before they hand it over to the people. According to insiders, beginning in late November, guys, President Trump authorized a series of blacklist operations that were carried out by special teams operating outside of the standard military chain of command. Well, these actions were approved under the Title of 50 Authority, which does not require congressional approval or public disclosure. So knowing that there are agents that have infiltrated Congress, the Title of 50 Authority allows the Earth Alliance to operate without the approval of Congress until, of course, they are arrested and eliminated. In Switzerland, several elite banking executives were also reportedly arrested within the last 3 days. Official media accounts attributed the action to fraud investigation, and some sources did dispute this explanation, claiming that the true objective was the seizure of a server farm near Lake Geneva. Well, the facility was used to manage off-book cryptocurrencies, assets that were tied to little one trafficking payments, the children, illegal AI model transactions, and unregulated DNA data markets. The site is also described as having shared digital blackmail materials that were associated with legacy networks that were linked to Jeffrey Epstein. In Canada, north of Quebec, U.S. forces reportedly carried another covert operation against a private airship and underground vault. Canadian military authorities were not just notified, the operation were not notified because the Canadian military authorities are under the command of the cabal, unfortunately. So this operation was justified under national emergency agreements that established itself after September 11, 2001 by the Alliance. Sources did claim the site had been used for years to stockpile gold, food, weapons, and off-grid internet infrastructure. The facility has since been neutralized. In Nigeria, a compound allegedly connected to ISIS-affiliated groups described as proxy forces utilized by Western intelligence. Well, who do you think controls ISIS and the Islamic terrorist networks? Netanyahu. Think about it, guys. Okay. So in Nigeria, this compound connected to ISIS-affiliated groups described as proxy forces utilized by Western intelligence, Mossad, was struck by an Alliance U.S. aircraft. The strike was reportedly ordered after a classified report indicated that U.S.-based church charities were being used as fronts for arms transferring. Wow, so much corruption worldwide. Currently, 2 U.S. Navy destroyers are positioned in the Caribbean as I speak, as of today. Okay, this happened today, this morning. While official statements are describing the deployment as a routine patrol, sources assert that the vessels are interdicting elite escape routes involving submarines and cargo ships that were operating between Venezuela, St. Vincent, and Martinique. Well, these islands are described as hubs for server storage, cash movements, and the covert transport of high-profile assets as well. According to sources, the directive was explicit: no exits permitted. Well, all of this boils down to the end game, knowing that in 2028, we could either go into a further simulation through artificial intelligence control, or we could go into the new Earth by being part of a new living conscious network that is going to be connected to the QFS. Okay, so we could say that overall, guys, the conflict between the Alliance, as it comes to a finish line, and the cabal, for the most part, it's always been described or framed as a political, military, and financial struggle, right? Well, it is, but underlying everything, beneath all surface narratives, the true meaning of the battlefield is rather an energetic and informational grid to see who controls the grid structure of the Earth itself. That's point and simple, okay? It is the energetic and informational grid of the Earth itself. If you guys recall, okay, I did reveal a couple weeks ago that the original grid, which is a living conscious lattice connected to all living things, has been suppressed by the dark magicians, their alien dark overlords, and the cabal for thousands of years. So this is not just a war of resources or ideology. It is a war over the operating systems of reality on this planet. Well, the original living grid, long before the empires, right, currencies or centralized powers, in other words, right before Babylon took over, Earth did function within a living planetary grid, a conscious architecture that was apparently interwoven with human DNA, sacred geometry, and cosmic balances and harmonics. Even ancient civilizations understood this grid intuitively because it flowed through all the ley lines. through all the crystalline strata, through all the temples, and most importantly, through the human heart field. Okay, it connects to the human heart field, allowing consciousness, creativity, and abundance to circulate freely. So this is why the Alliance is trying so hard to restore this grid. Okay, because that brings us ultimately into the original reality that we fell from after the fall of Atlantis. All right, let's continue here. So this living grid, according to insiders, it ultimately amplifies life, okay? It expands human consciousness, so it no longer be needed suppressed, okay? It synchronizes humanity with the entire planet, the sun, and ultimately, guys, the greater galactic field. And so for thousands of years, this living system was deliberately suppressed by the Babylonian Brotherhood, which is who the Cabal's descendants are, and replaced it with an artificial control grid, right? Often referred to in esoteric history as the Babylonian grid, which has been controlling this world for thousands of years. Well, this imposed lattice inverted natural flows and introduced hierarchy, scarcity, and even fear-based control. The central banking concept, debt slavery, fiat currencies, which, by the way, originated in Babylon, and even rigid time structures were not only isolated inventions, okay? They were part of this false grid. They were interfaces plugged directly into the artificial grid to siphon people's negative emotions like fear, fear, shame, and guilt, okay? And then money in this inverted grid became disconnected from value, labor became disconnected from purpose, and therefore humanity became disconnected from the earth. And so the Cabal's true power has never been their armies, my friends, or institutions. It has been their lock on the grid, right? By keeping us locked into a system of control. Well, in the positive timeline, which is something that the Alliance is preserving through their efforts, the Alliance will not only introduce just a new financial system that we call the QFS, but a grid correction, okay? In other words, the QFS, which is conscious, a living conscious, is often misunderstood as a banking upgrade. In reality, it is a grid interface designed to reconnect finance with the living planetary network. And so at its core, we have what is called as the QFG. And I think I was the first one to introduce that. It's called the Quantum Global Freedom Grid, or the Quantum Freedom Grid to be exact. Well, the Quantum Freedom Grid is another or a modern term describing the old original grid, okay? And it's also described as a resonance-based system rather than a debt-based one. They also anchor the QFG will also anchor the Earth's crystalline and plasma fields back with in connection with every human. It will also sync with human bioenergy fields and consciousness coherence. And most importantly, it will be transparent, immutable, and self-balancing. So unlike the Babylonian grid, which has dominated our world and consciousness for the last few thousand years, the quantum freedom grid cannot be hijacked because it does not function through secrecy or leverage. It operates through alignment, okay? As the QFG comes online, the artificial grid loses coherence, which means that the central banking structures, which is something that Putin and Trump are covertly working on ending, that are once have been sustained by energetic inversion, right, begin to collapse naturally. And so that's just what's happening right now, guys, okay? Within this framework, the fiat currency is not just economically obsolete, and this explains why silver is rising and why Ripple and XRP are going to go skyrocket, because it is energetically incompatible. Okay, I'm talking about the fiat currency. when it comes to the activation of the quantum freedom grid, which is going to parallel the activation of the quantum financial system, the type of it's going the old fiat system will be energetically incompatible with it, okay, with the restored grid, and that explains its collapse. Well, according to Alliance briefings, it is well understood that the real Donald Trump is positioned, and the reason I say the real is because there are some imposters, okay? This is where you guys need to have your intuition. Read between the lines. It is a movie, okay? We are watching a movie in a way, okay? So according to this Alliance briefing, the real Donald Trump is positioned as a catalyst figure in the transition phase to the quantum freedom system and the quantum freedom grid, financial system and freedom grid. His role is not presented as ideological, but architectural, triggering the release of systems that accelerate the grid shift. Now, in this trajectory, the activation of crypto mechanisms will mark the symbolic and technical termination of the fiat system. What remains is not a Wild West crypto landscape, but a consolidated asset-backed framework. And so within the positive timeline, speculative and energy-inverted cryptocurrencies will collapse with the old grid, and that includes Bitcoin. Systems aligned with transparency and real value will persist, and that includes XRP and Ripple, which are framed as survivors due to their asset-backed settlement-focused design that is tied to the real metals and tangible value rather than extraction. So here, money will cease to be a tool of control as it returns to its original role, which is a medium of exchange within a living system, the quantum freedom grid. So what this means is that victory is more of a grid event, okay? And there is a lot of ample evidence that the grid has always controlled the level of consciousness of every human, okay? So once we are under the real grid, the old grid, the original one, the one that used to operate during the days of Atlantis, we will no longer be suppressed, okay? Our consciousness is going to go beyond the 3D into the higher dimensions. In other words, that's when we will be entering the new earth. And so the Alliance does not defeat the cabal through force. They override their entire power structure of control, which is their grid. And when the living grid reasserts itself, in other words, when the old artificial grid becomes dismantled and the only true grid remains, right? Control systems will lose their power overnight. Artificial hierarchies, including negative AI, will dissolve. Centralized populations or centralized manipulation will not be anchored anymore. And humanity will regain energetic sovereignty once again. And this is why the war appears to be chaotic on the surface. But inevitably, beneath it all, once the grid changes, or what we say the artificial collapses, and the only true one remains, right? All this overlay becomes dissolved and the true reality surfaces. Everything will plug into this new system as the old system collapses. So in short, guys, the war for the earth was never about nations. It was never even about politics and not even about money, okay? It has always been about who controls the grid. And if whether or not the earth remains a harvested system, because under the old Babylonian grid, they were looshing the earth. The earth was a harvested system, right? They were looshing off of our negative emotions, survival, fear, hate, greed, guilt, all of that, okay? Which was a byproduct of this artificial grid, okay? So now that the Archon masters are gone, right? The astral realm has been cleansed, thank God. It's just a matter of time before we conduct a final elimination on a physical level, okay? So what will be remaining is a living sovereign world that is aligned with freedom, abundance, and once again, with the cosmic law. And in the positive timeline, the living grid has already won, my friends. Now, bear in mind that across advanced interstellar civilizations, survival is not achieved through domination or extraction or even artificial control systems. Obviously, they are proven to fail. It is achieved through coherence. Okay, and this is how we live in balance with all living things. These societies of a type 1, type 2, and type 3, which are very spiritually advanced, those that are part of the positive advanced civilizations, never rely on centralized authority or synthetic intelligence to govern reality, but instead they operate through an all-organic network of consciousness, which is a living sentient web that connects every being in the universe, every planet, every star, and dimension into a unified harmonic system. So this is why it's important to understand that the QFS, which is going to parallel with the activation of the original grid, which is what the Alliance now calls the QFG, the Quantum Freedom Grid, is a restoration back into this type of society. So this is the natural architecture of the cosmos, guys, before the inversion set in. Okay, before the archons and the fallen ones took over. This is the natural architecture of the cosmos. And this is why we are returning to that in the positive timeline. So according to galactic records, these advanced spiritual societies, and there's millions of them in our cosmos, by the way, technology is not imposed on life, never, okay? It emerges from life. Think about that for a second, guys. Okay, infrastructure is grown, not built. Communication is instantaneous, not transmitted. Governance is resonance-based, not hierarchical. Every civilization in the cosmos that is aligned with the one infinite creator understands one fundamental law. When consciousness is aligned, order arises naturally. Think about that. When consciousness is aligned with all living things, order arises naturally. Okay? So there is a living network of consciousness, guys, all throughout the universe that binds and permeates everything, very similar to the Force of Star Wars. The organic galactic network has always functioned as a cosmic nervous system where each being acts as both an individual node and a collective expression of the whole. Thought, emotion, intention, and even awareness propagate through the network instantly, not as data, but as frequency. Key characteristics of this network include no more deception or no deception. That's why there is no deception in these higher advanced spiritual civilizations, which means that incoherent intentions cannot propagate. Think about that. There is no scarcity, all right? Because energy and matter reorganize where needed. There is no domination. Imbalances self-corrects through feedback. And there is no isolation because individuality exists within unity. Advanced civilizations do not complete or do not compete with one another. Never do they do. Okay? They entertain with each other, or entrain rather, in balance. That's the right word, entrain in balance. They form vast federations of worlds that remain distinct yet inseparable. Okay? And this is what galactic harmony actually means. Not peace enforced by law, but balance sustained by consciousness. So as civilizations evolve beyond what we call the 3D, right? They pass through critical thresholds of dimensional awareness. And this is what's happening right now on the Earth. In the fourth dimension, for example, for those overall good humans that are not old souls, that are Earth Terran souls, that are they're going to be ascending in increments. right? As they go into the fourth D Earth, which is going to be an interstellar advanced Star Trek society, time does become more fluid, okay? Thoughts begin to influence probabilities. Emotional coherence is more determined, or determines experience, rather. Cause and effect accelerates, revealing the creative power of consciousness itself. And this is where a civilization learns a profound truth, and that is that reality responds not to action, but to a state of being. However, for those of us, the older souls that are going to go into fifth dimensional Earth and above, manifestation becomes immediate. There is no delay between thought and form, right? Because separation between observer and observed dissolves. Well, at this level of consciousness, fifth dimensional and up, fear cannot exist, right? Because it'll collapse instantly. Deception is very impossible because everything is visible. And therefore, conflict cannot sustain itself. It destabilizes the field. Beings begin to merge consciousness with all living systems, especially as we go into the sixth dimension and above. We become part of what the raw material calls a social memory complex. As beings become emerged, or their consciousness merges with all living systems, including planets, the biosphere, the stars, and eventually the galaxy itself, as we reach the 11th dimension. Identity begins to expand without losing individuality. And then at that point, one becomes both self and system, both the drop of water in the entire ocean, both a particle and the wave. This is where we're heading, guys, in a positive ascending timeline. Not symbiosis through artificial means and external technology, but returning back to a state of harmony and balance as we build or restore our connection back to all living things organically. Bear in mind, guys, that the higher we go in reality, matter responds to light faster, okay? Form obeys awareness. And this is not magic, okay? This is the original physics. Think about that, the original physics. Within this cosmic framework, right, the Earth Alliance is not acting independently either. They are operating under the direct mandate from higher galactic guardians, who are the ancient stewards of these civilizations that were tasked with protecting all organic life forms from the artificial dominion, which is the end game of the cabal. I've already described that Netanyahu is trying to build the third temple so that the Android superintelligence AI rises on his behalf. And as mentioned earlier, Netanyahu is not human. He's using advanced holographic technology to appear human, or at least give the appearance of a human, but he is an Anunnaki, okay? Revealed for the first time on my channel. Well, the assignment of the Alliance, as given to them by the Guardian Councils, is to dismantle the artificial control grid. That is the only way that the Earth will ascend into the positive timeline, okay? Also, they were given a task to restore the Earth's organic consciousness interface, which is, again, the quantum freedom grid, the original grid that connects all living things. Also, they were tasked with preparing humanity for harmonic integration with other civilizations within the positive harmonics, and also prevent negative AI, or what we call soulless, pure logic AI, based synthetic dominance that is based on synthetic dominance timelines to dissolve. Okay, they were tasked to prevent that too. So that therefore, Earth is not being saved. Earth is being reintegrated back into the original living matrix, not matrix, living matrix. Okay, there is a difference. So for thousands of years, the planet was apparently quarantined, guys, right, behind inverted systems that suppressed all natural roles in the galactic network. Humanity was kept fragmented so that the organic signal could not reemerge until now. The Alliance mission is to restore the signal's integrity with the quantum financial grid and the quantum financial system. And And so this is what's happening, okay? This is what they were tasked to do. And Earth is apparently a very unique world among developing worlds for many reasons. Most importantly, because humanity carries a multi-origin consciousness, a convergence of genetics, energetics, and dimensional lineages from across the cosmos. So this makes Earth a potential interstellar bridge in future cycles of time between all species, capable of operating across multiple dimensional bands simultaneously. And then once the Earth stabilizes into coherence, it will become a living relay node in the galactic network. And this is part of the galactic prophecies, by the way, which means that human consciousness on this planet will join the larger universal field, okay, where interstellar societies can interact without distortion anymore. And this is why the guardians are involved on every level of reality. And this is why I always assure you guys that we have nothing to worry about. And by the way, yes, we are still on a positive timeline trajectory on the 29th of December, 2025 AD. Because the timelines matter overall, okay? This is one of the biggest reasons why we are here. And this is why the grid war underlying the political, financial, and intelligence war, cyber war, quantum war is the underlying, you could say, final move. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. So this is why the grid war has, you could say, had to be resolved first when you really think about it. Okay, the future the Alliance is preparing for is not technological dominance or galactic conquest. No, it is something far more advanced. It is preparing our Earth civilization to become part of a greater network, okay, that will create through awareness, okay, a species that governs through resonance, a world that lives in a conscious, as a conscious being with other worlds, and a humanity that will remember what it was before it fell from consciousness. All right, we are being restored to galactic humans. And so in higher dimensional societies, as mentioned earlier, the question is never who is in control. The question is, are we in harmony? Are we in harmony? And in the positive timeline trajectory, Earth's answer is yes, of course. And it will take its place amongst these civilizations that understand that the universe, not as a ruling thing, but as something to live in harmony with. Okay, so this is the difference between the fallen civilizations or the dark, negative civilizations, is that they always try to dominate the universe. They don't live in harmony with it, is what I'm trying to say. And I also want to clear a few things regarding 3i Atlas really quick before I open it up for Q&A. I do want to welcome all 2,961 people that are in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. I do have one super chat. I'm not done yet. I'm not going to open it for Q&A. I do have another report regarding what's happening with 3i Atlas, as it's still in our solar system, by the way. What is the best way to hold XRP going forward? Thanks for the incredible intel. You are so welcome. Well, if you are already invested in XRP, just keep investing in XRP, because based on what's happening right now, it's going to skyrocket. All right. And it's probably going to happen very soon. All right. Let's go back to the report. So it turns out that the latest calculations suggest that 3i Atlas has been detected on a trajectory, or on a hyperbolic trajectory, that could execute a gravitational swing by of Jupiter, an encounter that would dramatically alter its path through the solar system. So it's heading back to Jupiter. And I was able to actually connect with Valiant Thor about this, and he did confirm that there is going to be another meeting that is going to be taking place regarding the Jupiter Command, Solar Warden, and of course the emissaries of 3i Atlas. Well, it turns out that this scenario has apparently captured the attention of scientists worldwide, right? In the last, week, it flew at its closest proximity to the Earth, and now it's going back to Jupiter. The scientists are really they're mind blown. They don't understand what's happening right now. And as you guys know, Jupiter is not just another planet, right? It's full of life forms operating from the fifth dimension and above, right? And it's also our solar system's dominant gravitational gatekeeper, capable of reshaping the destinies of passing bodies with a single close approach. Well, in this case, 3i Atlas, those uncertainties are precisely what makes the object so compelling. What makes the object so compelling. So what is puzzling observers at this time is that they thought 3i Atlas was going to come and go. And apparently it's not. It's just making trajectory changes, right? It's changing its course constantly. So, yeah. It's behaving rather not according to the laws of physics, right? Its trajectory is constantly changing. Its speed is constantly changing. And that doesn't fully align with expectation for ordinary comets or asteroids when you really think about it. Well, equally intriguing are the variations in its tail behavior, changes in brightness, structure, and even what we call directions that seem to fluctuate beyond what standard models of solar heating and outgassing would predict. And so none of these anomalies alone prove anything ordinary, obviously. And they believe that there are some forces at work here, right? It's obviously artificial, meaning not artificially intelligence, but it's intelligently designed, is what I'm trying to say. So some scientists are pointing to a non-gravitational effect, such as a asymmetric outgassing interactions with solar radiation pressure or complex rotational dynamics that could nudge the object off an otherwise smooth path. And then others caution that the data set is still too small, that the observation window is still too narrow to draw firm conclusions, while interstellar objects arrive fast, depart quickly, and often leave astronomers racing to redefine models in real time. And that's what's happening right now, okay? So as this mystery continues to perplex our controlled scientific community, each new observation seems to sharpen the question rather than resolve it, which means if 3i Atlas does not pass close enough to Jupiter for a significant swing by, the encounter could extend its time within the inner solar system or redirect it toward an entirely new exit route. This is what they're speculating, but of course I was informed by Commander Valiant Thor that it's going to be here at least till March, okay? Well, such prolonged presence would offer scientists a rare opportunity: sustained observations of materials formed around another star, shaped by conditions far beyond our own cosmic neighborhood. Well, beyond the technical intrigue that is happening right now, as 3i Atlas is still in our solar system, this whole scenario has taken on a broader cultural and philosophical significance, right? Interstellar visitors tend to do that. They arrive unannounced, indifferent to human narratives, yet inevitably influence them. Well, the idea that an object born in another solar system, right? And I've already mentioned it came from Sagittarius A, located at the center of the galaxy. Moves through the skies, even briefly steers something that the ancients knew very profoundly. And as mentioned before, there is record that 3i Atlas has been around here 6 prior times in different epochs, okay? And some even believe that this is the sky signal that the Hopis were referring to as the Blue Kachina. Well, overall, guys, this challenges the notion of isolation, right? We're not alone in the universe. And ultimately, it reminds us that the solar system is not a closed box, but rather part of a vast dynamic galactic ecosystem, as will be proven when the veil dissolves. And it's, in essence, okay, this movement aligns with a wider sense of transition, a growing openness to cosmic perspectives. As mentioned, there is a revolution in science happening right now, thanks to 3i Atlas, that will lead into a full disclosure timeline, right? Where there are renewed conversations about life beyond the Earth due to its presence, and an accelerated push toward transparency and disclosure in space agencies. And that will be the end of NASA as we know it. Well, if 3i Atlas remains detectable for some time, especially if its path is reshaped by Jupiter, it may quietly influence this broader awakening, not by providing answers, but by normalizing the idea that interstellar phenomena is real, observable, and part of an ongoing story. Well, for now, guys, let's just remain with an open mind as scientists continue to watch the skies, refining their calculations and comparing notes across different observatories worldwide. It is going to be interesting how it all unfolds around March, okay? In doing so, we are also reminding and keeping an open mind, all right? Don't listen to what the mass media tells you. We are also being reminded that discovery does not always arrive as a revelation. Sometimes it comes as a question that lingers, ultimately reshaping our perspective long before it is ever fully even answered. And so, yeah, it's still around, guys. And from what I've heard is that it's actually heading over to Jupiter for another intergalactic meeting with representatives from billions of galaxies that are here in great hope and also in great, you could say, expectation that the Earth will once again be the hub that it was meant to be for the entire universe. I do see some super chats, and I do want to welcome all 2,900 people that are in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. So I will go ahead and answer the super chats first, and then I'll take random questions. Patriot for God, thank you so much for the super chat. Are there biological humans that are soulless? Absolutely. Yeah. NPCs were born normal as family and friends and can give birth, cannot ascend. I was told that some of these NPCs have lifeless sperm, and yes, they could give birth, but they don't ascend. That is correct. Not specifically evil or demonic, just soulless. Well, typically, the NPCs are lab grown humans that are literally programmed to just take orders like a computer. So, in that regard, yes, they are working for the dark side. And yes, they are here to drain our frequency. That is correct. All right, next super chat. Thank you so much, Suzeka-22. Did you see foreign currencies revaluing too? Yes, that is happening. Like the dinar, the zim, the Iraqi dinar, and the dong. I believe they are in the process of being revalued. Absolutely, and those currencies are part of the new financial system. Okay, or the quantum financial system. I have another super chat from Quantum View Therapy 8926. Hi Ishmael, please update us on 3i Atlas. I just did. Yeah, so it's changing its course once again. It's going back to Jupiter for an intergalactic briefing, where representatives of billions of galaxies are going to, I guess, finalize the positive timeline and the reacceptance of the Earth back into the galactic community. Jacob Scherer, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, we release the need to focus on problems and grow the hard way, the way of suffering and limitation. Instead, we open to new solutions and new pathways that lead to growth through joy. We are all one. I second that, brother. Thank you so much for sharing that. So it has been confirmed, guys, that Pam Bondi is a traitor, as well as Kash Patel. Sorry to say this, but I kind of knew it all along that his girlfriend was a honeypot. And yes, the alliance is very well aware of this. And right now, Trump is playing Netanyahu, all right, until he gets the green light. And again, Netanyahu, and Trump is being very careful because even Trump, the real Trump, knows that Netanyahu is not human. He is an Anunnaki. So he has to play his cards right. Okay? He has to play his cards right. Thank you so much, Joyful, for your super chat. No EBS, no mad bits, no money. Back to the people that's been stolen from us since the day we were born. No Nicera, no public arrests, no 5D, no DNA upgrades. What is going on? Well, you should watch this from the beginning. Don't lose hope. There is hope, by the way. The Alliance and the Guardians of Councils have secured the positive timeline where all of this is real. So if you can, Joy, just watch this from the beginning so that I actually answer all your questions through this briefing today. Thank you so much for being here, Joy. Don't lose hope, sister. The light is always on the winning side because God, the ultimate God with the capital G, is in control. Thank you so much, Donika, for the donation, as well as Karen Hess. Thank you so much. All right, random questions here. All right, this is from Nathan Taylor. Thank you so much for the super chat. You said when we come back from 5D, we will be like angels, but can we look like a regular person if we want? Well, yeah. Not only are we going to be like angels, but we're also going to be very physical. See, in order to materialize back into the 4th D from the higher dimensions, all we have to do is lower our frequency. So we're going to be materializing a human body that is very physical, very tangible, but we're going to be able to manifest superhuman abilities. So in that regard, yes, we're going to be like angels. And when you consider that even the Old Testament angels, as they appeared to Lot, the early Israelites, Abraham and Moses, they all were very physical, right? These were extraterrestrials, of course, positive extraterrestrials, which is what the Bible calls angelics, Pleiadians, Andromedans, popping into their reality to help them in ancient times. And so that's going to be repeating again in the new positive ascending Earth timeline. Can we shapeshift and will we still have our bodies we're in now? Well, this is the final incarnation. Whatever body you have, you will keep that body. However, as you continue ascending with your body, you will have the power and the ability to shift your body or change its appearance, where you could transform into an eagle, a bird, a lion, transform into a mountain, or become pure energy. Right. That's right. You're going to be able to also allow your body to become pure energy if you want at the highest levels of reality. So, yeah, but overall, when you do materialize back into physical form, it will be this body, however, looking 30 again. Thank you so much, Edward Wusick, for your donation. This is a good one. Understand that both timelines, I guess you're referring to the negative and positive, and dimensions are only states of mind. Bingo. Bingo. So that's why I always stress that being positive and only entertaining positive thoughts is very important and key and keeping us intact in the positive ascending timeline when the split takes place, which is what many religious systems call the harvest, the separation of the wicked from the just. Nothing is finite in an infinite universe. That is correct. That is true. However, bear in mind that we have been dropping in frequencies from the infinite internal universe into lower systems or densities that appear to be finite, forgetting our true origin, which is eternal. So that is very true. I do have another super chat. Thank you so much, Nathan Taylor. So you said that we could walk through walls. What if you are carrying objects? Will they go through the wall? Well, you will have the power to change the frequency of objects. And by doing so, yeah, even when you walk through walls, you'll be able to take the object with you through the wall because you'll have the power to change the frequency, allowing the object, changing the density so it goes through the state of matter, right? So that is correct. Yes, NPCs are lab grown and not okay. The original NPCs were lab grown, yes, but bear in mind that they also have dead sperm that only give birth to more NPCs. Do humans procreate the same way in the 5 dimension? There is still intercourse, but it's done on different levels of reality. It's more multidimensional. So it's a multidimensional orgasm, you could say. It's more of light body connecting with another light body physically and etherically and exchanging that the I'm back, guys. Apparently, I was kicked out of my own live here. So, must have been something I said. But to answer the question that was previously or last asked before they kicked me off of my live, intercourse in 5th dimension and above is more energetically. It's still physical, but it's felt on every level of reality. Okay, so it's an exchange of energy. Yes, I am back, and I do want to welcome all 3,000 people that are in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. And again, if you guys super chat, you know you're going to get your questions answered, and I do appreciate those. It does help my cause. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Cardi. Is it Carol? Sorry, Carol. Thank you so much for that generous super chat. Ishmael, why doesn't God want cats and dogs to talk? Well, believe it or not, even the animal kingdom ascends. So there are levels of reality where animals do talk and they speak not only telepathically, but also with words. Okay, there are civilizations out there, guys, where the animals or the pets do talk to the humans, all right? Yes, that is correct. Silver is in the rise, and gold and silver will continue climbing. That is correct. Oh, absolutely. Gold and silver will always increase in price as the new system comes online, especially. Sage Mystic Warrior, thank you so much for the super chat. She's asking, so what is the truth behind the mass deportations ongoing right now? And innocent people being deported and displaced. That is a very good question. I never heard about the innocent people being deported, but from what I hear is that there are massive raids happening right now with ICE to deport a lot of the illegals. And so I'm going to have to look into you know, the innocent people that are being deported. But in this case, if they're here illegally, even though they're not part of the criminal networks, it is against the law to be here illegally, right? So yes, they are being deported. Doesn't necessarily mean they're evil, but again, they have to do it the right way. Yeah, right now XRP seems to be down, guys. But when the great changeover takes place, right, XRP is going to be among the only crypto, along with Ripple, that will remain, and all other crypto will fall. How long are we going to need money for? Well, money is only needed within the fourth density Earth and in certain layers within the fifth density, rather the lower layers. However, in the higher layers of the fifth density and above, or fifth dimension, there is no money. We manifest the speed of light. Jackie, baby, thank you so much for your super chat. She says, "Hi, Ishmael. Can you please explain coherence? Thank you. Happy New Year." Happy New Year to you as well, Jackie. The best way to explain